It's been very quiet. It's been a little while now, and nothing's happened. But has it? Can it always be like that? Welcome back to the Getting Closure podcast. I'm with Cheryl Stainsby. Cheryl, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, James. How are you?
I'm all right. Now, you've got an interesting number of things you get called in life. So in your upcoming podcast series, which is really about bankruptcy and surviving bankruptcy, one of the people you interview calls you a disaster coach. So you're a person who's got lots of different experiences and so forth. Okay, we've been talking about disaster over the last little period of time, and debts have got out of hand and you got a wind-up application. But now nothing's happened. It just seems like it's all died down. Where are we up to, and what do we need to watch out for?
So the company's in liquidation, and there's been an initial string of correspondence backwards and forwards from the liquidator, wanting books and records, wanting all the information, bank statements, copy of your Xero or your MyOb. And like you say, it's gone quiet. 6 months has gone by, maybe 12 months has gone by. You haven't heard anything, and you think it's all over, and you're thinking, that's it, I can move on with my life. And then suddenly, out of the blue, a letter comes. And it might be a letter actually making a demand on you, asking you to repay $495,000 in 7 days into the liquidator's trust account as a result of a director's loan or as a result of insolvent trading. And of course, you look at that and you freak out because you don't have that sort of money, and you certainly don't have access to it in 7 days.
Hang on, what just happened? I thought I was in the clear, and in fact, the process goes on for quite some time.
It does go on for quite some time, and look, without sort of pointing fingers or being critical at all, what a lot of people don't understand is they think their company is the uppermost thing in everybody's mind, but the reality is that most liquidators have a lot of work on the go at one time. And sometimes, they might take your appointment and then half a dozen other jobs come in which are a little bit more urgent. They take a priority, and sometimes then they'll jump back on, on your job in between jobs when they've got a quiet moment, or if, when time allows them to do so. So sometimes it can be 12 months, it can be 18 months before they actually get a chance to look deeply into the company's books and records and then make these sort of claims against the director. And I guess a lot of people didn't really see demand for a director's loan coming, and they certainly don't understand what insolvent trading is. So these are very stressful times for people when they suddenly receive these letters out of the blue.
And if we're using terms that don't ring a bell, we've got a bunch of different podcasts you should dive into on this series to sort of find out what is insolvent trading and what about directors' guarantees. I mean, one of the things we've talked about is with the house prices all going up, it's fantastic. But if you had no money when the business went into liquidation but owned your home potentially, but it was up in debt up to the eyeballs then, it may not be now. So there's another risk that you face. There's this kind of sword of Damocles hanging over the head of the director who thought it had been done and dusted in the liquidation, but maybe had some assets or maybe had some things that they walked away with. Doesn't mean they're always going to be there. So is that an argument for get some advice?
Absolutely. And James, I think you've just touched on a really interesting point, because as we all know, particularly in Brisbane in the last 12 months, property prices have skyrocketed. And we've actually seen a number of liquidators who perhaps hadn't really bothered to pursue a director for insolvent trading or a director's loan because they knew from the information supplied to them at the time the company went into liquidation that there was no equity in the director's property. But all of a sudden now they are probably getting a valuation done on the director's property and have discovered now there's maybe $200,000 equity in there. So in fact, perhaps the director can afford to come to an agreement, to come to a settlement, to pay some
That's
money.
the point, isn't it? It doesn't mean you lose your house automatically
No.
ipso facto. What it means is you've got to be back on the front foot and have a conversation or have a negotiation to come to an agreement to help effectively give a little bit more of the wealth that you now have back to the creditors who were out of pocket when the business was
That's right.
wound up. And so, again, it's about getting good advice what to do in these situations.
Absolutely. And once again, we can't stress that you've got to be proactive. If you stick your head in the sand and you do nothing, then the liquidator's within their rights to issue bankruptcy proceedings against you. But the reality is that if you're on the front foot and you talk to the liquidator, you can nearly always negotiate a settlement with the liquidator so you don't lose your house.
Thanks, Cheryl. Always good to end on a helpful and optimistic note.
Thank you.
A reminder that these podcasts are general in nature and do not constitute advice, and they don't take into account your personal circumstances. So if you think, though, that some of the issues raised might apply to you, you should seek qualified financial, legal or counselling advice.